This is the concluding part of my signature talk I'm developing in the community. So I'll be beginning with the conclusion. Okay, we've talked about heart math, we talked about nutrition, we talked about lifestyle, we talked about the core of health, all to help you better handle your stress. So you can experience greater health, you can actually be more productive at work, so you can actually be better at home with your relationships. That's about you. Now there's more in terms of what next steps would be in terms of what's beyond just taking care of our own health and handling our own stress. So let me illustrate, and this will review what we already talked about today, where we talked about how our thoughts and our feelings have a lot to do with how our body is. The problem is when we have a body concern, or if something is concerning us or an environment, if we put all of our attention on that problem, where our attention goes, energy flows, and things magnify. So if I bumped my head this afternoon, if I put all my attention on the blood that was coming out of my head, then that would be a problem. I would have been one of the cancellations this evening. So there needs to be a different orientation. And that orientation is on what's true. We talked about that. As our thoughts and feelings are oriented in what we know is true in our hearts, in our heart of hearts, it allows for a ground, you can say, a feeling of it's okay, I can handle this. And it allows for what we call in chiropractic, above, in terms of accessing our own innate intelligence, our own innate wisdom. And as that's received down into our conscious thinking process and feeling processes, we feel the power of that, the invigoration of that. And then something can extend out through us. That we have the power to participate in our lives. And this is where the next step is beyond just handling our own stress. There's a reason why we need to handle our own stress better. So we can participate in our lives better. Let me tell you about my father. My father went through a degenerative process early on, in his late 40s, early 50s, and his body began to get very kyphotic, crumbled, like hunched over. And I noticed before he got to a really accelerated point, at the dinner table, I grew up in New Jersey in an Italian family, and we had dinner every single night. My mother would make some good food. Yes. So, but I noticed my dad starting to disengage from our conversations. And I noticed that he was being disconnected. And then looking back, I noticed that accelerated his disease process. And he got to a point where it was actually my mother and my father only at home, where all the kids had left. And there was no one there in the house besides those two. And my mom really couldn't take care of him, but she held on to him years extra before we actually decided as a family he needed to go someplace else. And sure enough, when he went someplace else, you can imagine, my father Sam grew up in Newark, New Jersey. His father owned a grocery store in the middle of the block. They would sell wine out of the back room for 10 cents during Prohibition. So he had people all around growing up, so he was a real community person. But when he was just kind of just imprisoned in the house, there was no interplay there. And things really got bad for Mom to handle. So we got him to the veterans home. He was a veteran, and sure enough, he lived 13 years in the veterans home, where the average life expectancy is only 5 years from being there. So that's a story of how important it is to participate in our life. Let me tell you the story of my chiropractic mentor, Dr. Bill Bain. February 9th, 1981, I'm invited to a talk on stress. And you got to remember, for those of us who are old enough, late 70s, early 80s, you never know who's going to present, what they're going to look like on a topic on stress. So I get there late at the meeting, and I sit in the back row, and I'm looking at this guy, and he looks like anybody's uncle. He wasn't wearing a pyramid on his head. He looked like a regular guy. And I thought, wow. And then he started talking about things I always knew in my heart, but no one actually articulated. And it just flabbergasted me, and I was struck, and I couldn't believe his presentation, but the way he presented it. And we talked about HeartMath today, about being in coherence. He was expressing, like, just his words, his expression was so soothing. His voice, it was just touching. So it made me realize it's the influence we extend above, down, inside, out, through our bodies, out into the world, that we want to participate, but we want to participate coherently. Just imagine if more of us were participating in our lives, extending an influence that actually is soothing and peaceful and kind, what that would make for the world. So today, if what I've talked about has struck a chord with you, I would invite you to have a conversation with me. Let's find out in terms of what it takes for all of us to extend a healthier influence in the world. And I'm glad to help you do that in terms of helping you handle your stress better, as well as seeing how you can move forward in providing a coherent influence in the world. Thank you for your time.
Go for it. I was just making notes, yeah.
Yeah, I was making notes too. Steve, let me start with your whole posture up in front of the room is so much different from when I first saw you.
I remember you talking about
At the beginning of the year, not even just a few weeks ago. I'm thinking about that very first time I saw you. You were at your computer. Remember, you were talking there, and your confidence up in front of the room is night and day. Your voice is so much stronger. You don't have any fillers in there. You're very confident. It's really good. Really, I can really tell the difference. I like how you started out with recentering the group on what you've already covered. Here's where we were, and you kind of drew that out and pulled some things together, whatever that initial content might be. I think that's an important thing to do. Your stories, as you get into them, and I also need to work on this, is figuring out how to bring your audience along with you. I teach it, but I don't always do it very well. It's like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, come with me, the story about my dad. I didn't get it until the end, how it correlated with what you had already talked about that was on the board. And maybe just even one sentence, you know, in my own life when I was younger, and I watched my dad disconnect and stop participating in his life. Here's what happened. You know, to just go through the gradual story. And that would have had me following that part of it a little bit. If you're going to be wearing a microphone, I don't know how big your groups are, but if you're wearing a microphone, it's okay. But if you're not wearing a microphone, don't write on the board and talk at the same time to one or the other, because we can't really hear you when you're facing that way. That's a minor thing.
Okay. So totally agree that the delivery, the stance, the confidence, which is 75% of what we need to do as speakers, is definitely there. I would absolutely make sure you use slides. And it's just, my handwriting is off. It just, it is a rare individual.
I have slides.
Yeah.
This is my second.
Right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's a rare individual.
When you're doing a workshop.
Yeah, who can actually do that and make it legible so that it's not distracting for us. So your filler words are in terms of. I counted 8 of them, and I think I missed a couple. So
I didn't even think of that.
yes,
That's good.
And
That's worth the price of admission right now.
really, yes.
Now what's mine going to be when I do
Oh, I don't know. Oh,
prowl.
I don't always catch that.
She's on
you
the
know,
prowl for filler words.
That's it. My husband's is always, you know, to make a long story short, right? I'm like, okay, really? You can only use that once in a conversation.
My cousin is at the end of the day.
That's right. What I meant to say was, yes, I love where the attention goes, the energy flows. I think that's it's a very sing-song kind of statement. Wasn't wearing a pyramid on his head. I didn't get that. I don't know what that means.
Just weirdness, like the guy
Okay.
looked like anybody's uncle. Like back then, like I had in chiropractic school, there was a woman that wore a pyramid on her head, you know, in the early 80s.
Oh, okay.
So,
Like a hat,
That's
like
before
a.
your time, probably.
That's it. Okay. Well, so yeah, Devo. That's awesome. It's a totally different hat. Now I understand the pyramid
I
thing.
have another suggestion how to make that, you know, we try to throw some humor in.
Yeah, no, that was good, but
Yeah,
more relevant.
I wouldn't use a phrase that people might not, if it's generational,
Okay.
or isn't something that's used, on commonly, I would probably find some other way, even if you just say it's just weird, right? Or he didn't look weird, I expected him to look weird. I also got a little bit lost when you did the above, down,
Yeah.
and through us, right? So, and I figured that was just kind of part of the drawing piece. So it just might need some tightening
Sure,
up. It was
yeah.
just a little
Yeah, that was a
confusing.
little loose then.
Yeah, and I thought your stories are phenomenal, but they need to either be tightened up or more structured. I was kind of with Pam. I was like, okay, why did the story all of a sudden start? Like why did we? There wasn't a transition. It was like we had this statement and then we went into the story. So it took me a minute to catch up.
So did you transition, like Pam was saying? Like, sure.
I think what she talked about was phenomenal. Maybe tighten it up and give us a sense before you get to the point of, you know, it can make a difference in the length of our life if we connect with community. You know, maybe making a statement of that nature and then saying, for example,
Okay.
right? So something like that's a very, very basic transition, but that might be some way to kind of keep the flow. That was the only thing, is it interrupted your flow.
So the transition, the
Yeah.
segue.
Yep. I think that's it.
I don't have a whole lot more to add to that. I do love that where attention goes, energy flows. Kind of along with my tagline, what you focus on happens, and all that. There's so many different ways of saying the same thing, and I love hearing it other ways. I loved your call to action at the end. It was great advice that you gave me. I see how it worked well for you. And again, the last time I saw you, what a huge difference. I love you much more not behind the computer. You smiled through the whole thing. You looked so much more relaxed, so much more confident when you're standing up there than what I remember last time. You spoke a little fast through your dad's story. I loved your feedback about setting us up to what we're going to hear, what to look for. I thought your voice did project really nicely. It had a real nice strength to it. So that's all I have. And Michael, is that my phone?
It's right there.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'm just writing this now about previous, I like how you set up the reminder about the previous thing that they always tell us that in training. Okay. Body speech in front of the audience is so much more polished. I mean, every time you do it, it's like the third or fourth time I've seen you do it, it just keeps getting more and more polished. Good use of humor about the joke about if you were hit in the head, you would probably be one of the people laying. That was good. Got everybody laughing. The story about your dad was great. How it kind of connected the body and the mind, because he was always sharp, and then his body started to deteriorate. You put thoughts, feelings, and body. In my mind, I was thinking thoughts and feelings were almost the same thing. You might want to say something like mental versus physical or something. Because thoughts and feelings almost sound like the same thing. Because when you said feelings, you said you got hit in the head. So that's like pain, right? Pain or pleasure. Does that make sense?
Is it kind of like the factual thoughts versus the emotional
Well,
feelings?
it's like your heart
Because we
and
didn't go through
mind,
his curriculum.
your heart and mind capacities, body, like what goes on in your heart and your mind.
What's
Feelings
hard?
are the heart, emotion,
Well,
feelings
there's
are the emotion, and thoughts.
thinking and feeling processes.
Uh-huh.
Can you see the difference with that?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm thinking is more objective and feeling is more emotional. Those are
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good call to action, but you can make it better, because you said, and if you think we can do this, let's do it. I would just say, what did I say? Let's just do it, yeah, I'd just say, let's do this, as opposed to say, if you want to.
How would you phrase it?
Let's do it, let's get started. You know, something, I'm making that up, but just something like that.
Okay.
That make sense?
You mean instead of kind of like, well, would you like to come along?
Exactly.
Like, you know, instead of asking for them, their permission,
Assuming
he's
the order.
saying, just go for it.
And sale is called assuming the order. Let's get it going, you know, let's get it
Let's
started.
get started.
It's great.
Okay.
Woo! Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think you like my Italian story, but you
Yeah.